right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are talking about Sisu. So if you like seeing Nazis get killed in a movie, then this is the movie for you. We will be talking about it with Josh Raynor, the Merc with the Movie blog, and we got a great conversation, lots of really good puzzle pieces to talk about here, and lots of Nazi killing. So, that's coming up here in a second. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow us on social media at PiecingPod. I'm especially active on Twitter, but you can also find me on Instagram, where I've been using that quite a bit more lately. And join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. Last but not least, before we get to the conversation, I do want to remind you about our Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together. As a matter of fact, this episode's going on the Patreon as soon as I finish it, before it hits the main feed, unless you're hearing this when it hits the main feed, in which case it's been on the Patreon for a while, and you could have been listening to this for weeks already, but also stuff from Awesome Movie Year and from my music career. Lots of great stuff over there. Patreon.com/bydavidrosen. It's called the Produced by David Rosen Patreon. Check it out. And with that said, let's talk about Sisu. All right, it's time to talk about Sisu. And joining me is Josh Raynor, the Merc with the Movie blog. Josh, how you doing?
Doing great. I'm so excited to be back on the show. So talk about this movie specifically. I'm excited.
Yeah.
It'll be a good time.
It's going to be a fun one to talk about, that's for sure. It's such a crazy movie. I remember I had heard a little bit of buzz about it beforehand online, but I remember specifically when it first really got my attention was John Wick Chapter 4 opening night. And it, when that trailer played and the entire theater was cheering for it, I was like, oh, this is going to be just such a good time. And then I got to the theater and there was no one there. Where was everybody for this movie? That's what I want to know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I hadn't seen the trailer first.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I kept getting press releases for it, but I was like, oh, I've never heard of this. I just kind of scrolled past them, for the first 3 that I had gotten. And then I saw something on Twitter, and it was John Wick meets Mad Max, and I'm like, well, that piques my interest. And so then I watched the trailer. I was like, oh, I gotta check this out. And luckily I was able to get a screener for it, because I haven't been able to get to the theater in a while. So luckily I was able to get that, and I was so happy that I was able to, because I was very impressed.
Yeah, I think this movie that we're about to talk about is definitely something that, I don't know, maybe future cult classic, maybe this is just one that people are going to tell each other about, and it's just going to have a long life of its own, and who knows where that goes. But you know what? Let's start getting into some puzzle pieces here, and we will figure out what's going on in this movie. What do you have for your first piece?
Mine, I wanted to kind of not do one of the most obvious ones first, so I went with one that deals more with the making of the movie as opposed to the content of the movie, and I went with Rare Exports.
Oh, okay.
Because it's the same director,
right?
The same main star,
right,
and his kid who's in it as well. The tank driver, they're in both. So it's another Finnish story. Which I love that we're getting more of that. I feel like Finland is a place that we don't get a lot of stuff out of, at least not here. In the mainstream stuff here. So I don't know. Have you seen Rare Exports?
I have not, and it sounds like so much fun. It sounds like an absolute blast.
It is a wild ride. Christmas horror kind of thing going on. It's crazy, but it's got that same kind of super frenetic feel that this one had. It's like I said, it's the same director and everything, so it's a great one. And like I said, I wanted to tie that one in first, because as soon as I found out who made this movie, I was like, oh, I'm 100% in, because Rare Exports was fantastic. I watched it for the first time last year, and I fell in love with it. So
in Rare Exports, is it? I'm assuming ultra violent and very over the top, because like that's kind of the vibe I get from this dude.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, I gotta see it. I'm very much looking forward to checking that out one of these days. I will, I'll not go to the obvious ones. We'll get those in the middle because, like you said, let's get to a few other ones first. I'm gonna go with one that might be a little too recent to fully be a puzzle piece, but it felt like a really good companion piece to it, and that is last year's Prey, the Predator prequel film, a mostly dialogueless film that has to do with someone out in the wilderness with their dog, trying to survive against killers and a monster, and in that case, a predator, but in this case, monsters, Nazis, and then just the elements and just trying to survive in a absolute hellscape, and my biggest complaint with this movie is I wish the dog did more, because the dog is an awesome dog,
true,
and
yeah.
he could have like had some really great killer moments in this, but still having that like main character and a dog like surviving their way through all this, it made me think of Prey.
Yeah, I haven't seen Prey. It's on my
Okay.
list. It's one that I really want to. I've heard such good things about it. And you comparing this to that really makes me want to check it out even more. But yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I wish the dog had done more too. Because like throughout the movie, I'll be honest, I was like, is it his dog? I wasn't even 100% sure. There's just
Right,
like this
yeah.
random dog that he would just happen to be there because he would just leave it, but it would always find him somehow.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
he takes off in a plane and then somehow the dog still finds him. I mean, that's a heck of a dog right there.
It is a heck of a dog right there. And yeah, I think, come to think of it, like that whole thing of like the dog somehow finding him over and over again kind of lends itself to this like almost fable like feeling of this film, where it's like nothing really makes sense. Like it's a story we're being told, and you kind of got to go along with it. And that dog just finding him in the midst of all of this insanity, like
Yeah.
it really like lends itself to that kind of story. So I think that's an interesting point about the dog. Just he could have ripped out a Nazi throat or two or something like that. But
would have been incredible. I would have loved that.
What do you got for your next piece?
So I went with. I mean, I know like the marketing compared it to John Wick, but I went with Nobody instead, because I
Okay.
felt like it to me it felt a bit more comparable to that, because it's an older guy who's out of everything. Like understandably John Wick was out of the business of it, but it's this older guy who's very unseeming of having this kind of ability. And so I felt like it fit more to that. So I kind of wanted to go with that. I love Nobody. Bob Odenkirk is fantastic in that movie.
Oh yeah.
And every time as I was watching this movie, the main character is just kind of unleashing on these guys. It made me think of that, like that bus scene in Nobody, and he just kind of unloads on those dudes out of nowhere because they just think he's this old guy. It's like these Nazis roll up on this old man. They think he's a joke. And he shows the, I mean, he takes out like 7 of them, something like that. Like,
yeah.
So I think Nobody is a good comparison for it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're right. And the thing is with John Wick, it's just straight up violence, straight up like action, shooting and stabbing. Whereas here, like he's outsmarting them. He is like figuring out like clever ways to get out of these situations and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that definitely fits more with Nobody and the way that Bob Odenkirk has to approach the situations, because I mean, he's an older dude. He's not going to just like beat the shit out of everybody. He's just simply not going to be able to pull that off. So
and he doesn't have unlimited ammo.
Yes, that too. That is an important thing for sure.
Yeah.
You know what? Speaking of unlimited ammo, let's throw this one in there. Wolfenstein 3D, the video game.
Ooh.
Nazi killing. Lots of killing Nazis. So I mean, it's just a simple one. I mean, that game exists solely for the reason that seeing Nazis killed in movies and television and video games is fun, you know?
True.
So, and that's the kind of the main thing of this movie. It's like, wouldn't it be fun to see this old guy kill a bunch of Nazis? And it kind of just comes from that like kind of primal thing of wanting to see that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I haven't played a Wolfenstein game in a long time. So, but
Oh yeah, me neither.
yeah. But I hadn't thought about even putting a game as a puzzle piece. I hadn't crossed my mind to look into that realm of
Yeah.
anything. But I think it's a great pick. I really do.
Once in a while, I'll squeeze one in. You
Yeah.
know, it's gotta happen once in a while here. But what do you got for your next piece?
I mean, you know what? Let's stay on the track of killing Nazis. We'll go with Inglorious Basterds. You know,
Sure. Yeah.
really, as I started watching this movie, I was like, this has a very Tarantino vibe to it. Like, I could see this being a Tarantino with just less racial slurs, of course, but but specifically, because of the Nazis and everything in it, I feel like Inglorious Basterds is probably the one. If I had to pick one out, would be the one that I would go with. It's one of my favorite Tarantino movies. I think it was 2 years ago at the beginning of the year. I'd watched all of the Tarantino movies, and half of them it was the first time that I was watching them, including Inglorious Basterds.
Oh,
and
wow.
I loved it. It's
Yeah.
one of my favorites of his, and to see those kind of comparisons within this film, it does make me wonder if he was pulling from Tarantino's kind of vibe,
Oh yeah, absolutely. This whole film, it feels. I didn't put any Robert Rodriguez on my list. I don't know if you did, but it feels very Grindhouse. Also, like it feels like it could have been like one of those
That's
trailers.
literally I put on my list Grindhouse movies because it does.
Yeah.
It feels like a Grindhouse type of movie. Yeah.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And yeah, and that can fall very flat sometimes. But when it's done right, it is so much fun. And this is absolutely an example of it being done right. So I
Yeah.
mean, kudos to this director, and that makes me want to see more of his stuff.
I think that will lend it to, like you said, to it kind of gaining a cult following. Is like that Grindhouse feel to it. I think will help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're talking about a bunch of Tarantino here. I would also go with a bunch of Mel Gibson here. I know Mel Gibson is a little, not in vogue lately, let's say. But there's so much payback to this. There is so much Braveheart. There's even you can go with Jesus in the Passion of the Christ, just getting the shit kicked out of him over and over again and getting back up. It's also Apocalypto. This guy is basically like a slasher villain, except he's the hero, which was kind of the same way that Apocalypto was structured, in that this guy, he has the beats of what would essentially be a slasher villain, except this is the hero that we're following, and this is the guy that we're rooting for.
Yeah.
And, just the way that he just keeps getting beat up by these Nazis and like almost dying, almost losing, but always just so much sheer determination to get out of it every time and live through each one of those beatings and each one of those stabbings and whatever else he gets at him. Reminded me a lot of how Mel Gibson seems to love to structure his movies that he's in.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't seen Apocalypto, but the other ones, yeah, I could see that kind of style in there. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right on. What do you got next?
Because we already talked about the fact that it involves Grindhouse, because that was going to be one of mine. We already done that. This is I only have one more, and it's Mad Max.
Sure.
It's definitely got that. It's whether it's just Mad Max, whether it's Road Warrior, whether it's Fury Road, doesn't matter. It's got that, like you said, apocalyptic kind of feel to it. He's crossing this kind of a wasteland essentially, since the Nazis are just bombing the hell out of everything on their way out of Finland, and he's being chased down in a tank, really. And so like it really, to me, it screamed Mad Max throughout this, and I don't know, all of these things combined, it hits all the things that I love about movies in general. So like it was a perfect storm for me.
It's been a while since I've watched Fury Road. Don't all the women like kill the shit out of
Yeah,
Immortan Joe at the
and
end.
that's another
Yeah.
the rise up of that group of women in this movie. It
Yep.
screams Fury Road for that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had it on my list as well because definitely, especially that moment, but also it being like a kind of like a long chase sequence the whole movie, which
Yeah.
is, kind of exactly how Fury Road is structured. So, yeah, absolutely has to be in this conversation. I completely agree. I've got two more I'll bring up.
Okay.
First of all, I was going to go with No Country for Old Men. This is kind of the same reason as Apocalypto. Anton Chigurh is, just this unstoppable force that like barely even feels real. He's like a ghost that exists in this world,
Yeah.
And in this case, it's the same thing except for again, he's the hero. Like I was saying with Apocalypto. He's the guy you're rooting for, but he is just somebody who anyone who exists in this story is just absolutely frightened of because he clearly just doesn't want to die. And
Yeah.
he's not going to die, and you're just not going to get him. And so,
He
yeah,
just
I
wants his
thought that he
gold,
was,
man. That's all he
yeah,
wants. His
he
gold.
wants to save his gold, and that's the end of it. So you're not stopping that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, No Country for Old Men, and then the other one I had, I went with a bunch of Mel Gibson. I'm also going to go with a bunch of Stallone. A little bit of Rocky, a little bit of Rambo. Stallone's two biggest characters. You got the intense war violence of Rambo, also using his strength, his perseverance, and smarts all to survive, and plus lots of weapons too, of course, and explosions. But then with Rocky, with just keep on getting back up every single time he gets knocked down, and when you think he's going to be out.
I hadn't thought about that, but that's a really good point for Rocky.
Yeah, lots of Stallone. I could see like Stallone making a movie like this, you know, like even now I could see Stallone, I mean, this is an older dude, so I could see Stallone making a movie like this.
Oh,
so.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it fits in there perfectly. So yeah, a couple of Stallone things in there to put in. And then I'll just kind of shout out quickly because we actually did talk about these on our trailer episode, but both Gold with Zac Efron from 2020 and The Ballad of Buster Scruggs from 2019, both featured a character who finds gold and then has no way to get it back out to society, and like get it to safety.
I've never heard of the first one. I'll have to check that one out. Yeah. But yeah, Buster Scruggs. Yeah. That was a good one. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. There you go. So, yeah, that's all of our puzzle pieces here. I'll read down the list and then we'll get into some closing thoughts. We talked about Rare Exports, Prey, Nobody, Wolfenstein 3D, Inglorious Basterds, and Grindhouse. A bunch of Mel Gibson films, including Apocalypto, Mad Max and Mad Max Fury Road, a bunch of Stallone movies, mainly Rambo and Rocky, and then we threw in there Gold and The Ballad of Buster Scruggs as well. As far as like closing thoughts, any like other things that we didn't quite talk about here while getting through puzzle pieces, I just wanted to shout out the score. One of my favorite scores of the year. And also Grindhouse.
That score was incredible. Like,
it killed. It was so loud and banging and like just
like it was one of the things that I made sure to mention when I wrote my review for this because it stood out throughout the entire movie. Every time that score would just kick up, it just pulled you into what was happening, and it was it was just fantastic. The cinematography on this thing is incredible. It's such a it's weird because it's like it's not like this big studio movie that you'd expect to like be this amazing. It's It's something that most people are probably not even gonna like hear about. You know what I mean? And that's the sad part about it because it will probably be one of my top films of the year.
I wouldn't blame you at all. I wrote on Letterboxd that I said it's like a 3.5 star story, but with a 5-star score, 5-star ending, like some 5-star like violence. You know what I mean? Like there's so many great, amazing things about it in a very like down and dirty, simple story, but like it like really, really works where it works.
Yeah, it really did. Like you talked about how he kept getting up and all this stuff throughout it, but like it did to me. Most of the time, I should say, it didn't feel unrealistic. Like he had a little bit of luck that kind of rolled in, like when he's hanging. He got lucky there.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't this like John Wick, I can do anything kind of situation. It was he almost did die. He got real lucky in that situation. There was a scene underwater, which really kind of I don't know.
Okay,
I
so
still think about this scene, man.
let's talk about this for a second, real quick. Like, was he breathing in people's throat hole
That's
breath?
what I'm saying. Like I'm pretty sure I was like, there is a scene underwater that's like I don't know how logistically how this would work if it would actually work in real life, but it was awesome to see.
That was I brought up Wolfenstein in my puzzle piece. That was such like a video game moment where like you get like an air bubble or something
Yeah.
underwater and you get to just like stay, you get a few extra minutes of breath. Like
And it
was
made
wild.
his character just that much more badass too,
Yeah. Absolutely. What a cool dude. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I don't know. The only other thing I think we should mention real quick is the ending when he finally makes it to a bank and asks for bills because they're lighter and
Yes.
easier to carry.
Yeah.
Truly an incredible ending. Is there a better way to end a movie like this? Like you could picture him dying. You could picture him getting to like, I don't know, a safe house or something like that.
Yeah.
What an
Well,
ending.
throughout the
like-
movie, I wondered, I was like, is he trying to get like home to his family and all this? And I'm just like, no, he just wants his gold, man. That's literally all it is. And that's okay.
You worked hard for it.
Yeah. Like that is
you work that
okay.
hard, you deserve it, right?
Yeah. And I love like he does not speak until that final scene. Like not a single time. And I was like, because I watched it twice and I was like, on my second viewing, I was like, does he? Because I wasn't sure. I was like, maybe he just doesn't talk much. But no, he doesn't talk at all throughout that movie until that end, which I was like, that's impressive to be able to make such a compelling character where he just doesn't talk at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that does it for Sisu. Usually I ask my guests for a recommendation of a movie they watched recently, but I noticed that you also just recently watched Outpost, the directorial debut from Joe Lo Truglio. So I thought maybe we could chat about that for a minute here. Yeah,
I was pleasantly surprised by that one. I really wasn't sure what to expect from it. Other than, it's a Joe Lo Truglio. I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine. That's the only thing I actually know him from. And I knew
I love him forever, actually.
Yeah,
forever.
And I knew it was a horror movie, but that was it. That was all I knew when I got my screener for it. And I gotta say, I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. What did you think about it?
I thought it was a solid little thriller. I wouldn't say that I loved it. I thought it was like kind of well-worn territory. It doesn't like do anything particularly new or exciting with the genre, but he definitely shows promise as a filmmaker and specifically as a thriller type of filmmaker. Yeah. He's clearly being inspired by, I mean, we're not doing a whole episode, but clearly being inspired by a lot of thrillers and horror here.
I was gonna say there were a lot of puzzle pieces that I was like thinking about as I was watching that movie.
Yeah, I said in my Letterboxd review that he's in a little tower that's overlooking the mountain, the overlook, the shining. Get it?
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, he definitely does a good job of like synthesizing those influences into a little story that's like tight and compact, and a solid performance from the lead, who I recognize from Beth Dover, I believe her name is. I recognize from some of the other comedy stuff that he's been a part of. Like I said, I've loved him forever. The State and Stella and like Wet Hot American Summer and all those kinds of things. Like so, I recognize her as.
I forgot he's in that.
Oh yeah. He's part of that whole troupe of the State guys, and like everything that they do, he's always pops up in a little something. And for a while, he was in a lot of Judd Apatow stuff too. He'd show up in like one scene or whatever. And he's always just so funny.
He's probably one of those guys who's like, I've seen him in a bunch of stuff, but didn't know who he was. You know what I mean? Until it was just a couple of years ago that I binge watched all of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And so like I'm sure I have seen him in a bunch of stuff and just had no idea who he was at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, Outpost, cool movie out on
Yeah.
VOD. I would say I would recommend it as well, even though I didn't like it quite as much as you did. So yeah, people should check that out. And Josh, where can people check you out?
You can find me on Twitter at movieblogmerk. That's the Twitter page for my site, Merk with a Movie Blog. I also have a website, merkwithmovieblog.com, where I do written reviews and stuff like that. So, and I'm going to be covering the Tribeca Film Festival. So, I'll
I
be
saw that. That's
doing
awesome.
written reviews and video reviews on my YouTube channel. So, keep an eye out, everybody.
I will definitely be keeping an eye out for that. And thank you again for doing the show. And
Yeah,
hopefully
thank you for
we'll get
having
you
me.
back again sometime.
Oh, absolutely.
Hi, I'm Max.
And my name's Pablo, and we're Galaxy FM. Do-do-do-do-do. My name's actually Danilo, but sometimes people call me Pablo. After 11:30, baby. And speaking of 11:30 and time, 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, a new episode of Galaxy of Film drops every fucking Thursday. So I don't know what you're doing on Thursday. You're gonna get ready for the new music drop, but listen to Galaxy of Film first. 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, every fucking Thursday. We have a blast. We talk about new movies. We pair it with an old one. We're Galaxy of Film, baby, and we're dialed in.
All right. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Sisu. Thanks to Josh Raynor for joining me on that one, and thank you to everyone out there listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, of course, make sure you're subscribed. But also, we would really appreciate it if you dropped a 5-star rating and review either on Apple Podcasts or Good Pods or Spotify, wherever it is that you're listening. If there is a button you can click to leave us a review, we would really appreciate that because I love hearing from you people. So definitely do that. And also, if you ever want to join me for an episode, I am always looking for new guests, so definitely get in touch. You can find me on social media at PiecingPod or join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, and get in touch with me also on the website. There's my email address on there. I love hearing from people, so please do get in touch. Other than that, I told you about the Patreon at the top of the show. Don't forget about that. Produced by David Rosen on Patreon. Lots of great content over there. And with that said, let's close this thing out with a piece of my music like we always do here on the show. And just recently, I released a new album called More Content. And I'm going to play the first track on that album called More because this being a heavy, hard-hitting film, this is a heavy, hard-hitting track that I think goes with that pretty well. So this is More from the album More Content. Hope you enjoy it, and we'll be back with more piecing it together really soon.
an All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.